Good afternoon. This is Blair Williams at the Cumberland County Historical Society. Today is April 27th, 2015. I'm here with Athan Mazias.
Mazias. That's pretty good. That's not bad. That's all right.
First off, could you just tell me where you were born?
I was born here in 1976 in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, at the old, when I say old Carlisle Hospital, which is down by Dixon College.
And so you've lived in Carlisle your whole life?
Yes, I have.
All right. Could you just tell me a little bit about your family?
Family background. Let's see here. Mother and father. My father is brothers with Athan Mazias, who owns the Hamilton restaurant. And they've been in business there. They've worked there all of our lives. I mean, since I was like a little kid, everyone worked in the restaurant business. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's how we were brought up, all of us, from little kids, that was our home base practically, literally, even during the summertime. Unless we were good enough, we got a little time out, whatever, to go wherever, maybe Hershey Park for like a special trip, whatever, but it was always work, and, my dad, Tommy, they were 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they all worked continuously, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so until they changed the hours, which is a blessing, thank goodness.
And just quickly, what are their names?
Gus Mazias.
Okay.
My mother's Georgia Mazias. And like I said, I have one sister, Kathy, Rhodus now. Me, myself, Athan Mazias. And we have Tommy, who owns who's pretty much is the core guy at the Hamilton, you know what I mean? Him and his wife, who's deceased now, Angie Mazias, and his two boys, Athan and another Athan Mazias and John Mazias. So we had a good core there.
Yeah. So actually, before we get to your childhood and whatnot, I was just wondering, did your father and mother or Tommy, did they ever talk about Greece or what?
In what regards?
I'm just wondering, did they come over from Greece? Or?
Oh, well, you gotta understand, like, Tommy came over here when he was probably about, I think it was like 12 years old, or 11. Yeah, right around there. And back at the time, Charlie Colas, who owned the building, who started the Hamilton restaurant, his daughter helps out here, Helen.
Yep.
And Helen. He brought a lot of other Greeks over here from over there, like a lot of underprivileged, impoverished. They didn't have very poor, because back then, you're talking about back in the 40s and 50s, especially during that World War II stage, you had a lot of kids that were very poor, a lot of families that were poor, underprivileged, or whatever you call it. They were, they needed money. So he'd bring a lot of these boys back over here to get them going, work in, make some money. He'd send money back home. They'd send money back home to their families, whatever. And eventually they were all integrated into into their own roles, into their own restaurants back in the, there's tons of guys that left there. That's where everyone started off at. You know, it was one of those things where when Tommy came here when he was 12 years old. My dad came in here after the military. He was probably 24 at the time. My mom was 19. Yeah, 24, 20, yeah. And they're now in their 60s, 70s, so they've been here. This is home, practically now.
Yeah.
Even though they love going to Greece, love going back, but this is their core right here. This is where they come back to,
So when you were growing up, they didn't really talk too much about what their life was like back in Greece?
You know what? Growing up, actually, you know what? You never really understood, how do I say this? They weren't really open about, they never really brought it up. I mean, they brought up, how they grew up sometimes, about food and money and stuff like that, but now, the older you get, you learn a lot more. They're more open to you. You good?
Yeah.
Okay. The older you get, you ask more questions, you learn a lot more growing up. A lot more. Stuff that they were never really talked about growing up, like when you were little. Maybe about, food on the table and, how things work. They didn't really get in depth, but they were very stern on, what they believed in and how they were brought up, and, very how do I say it? Very very strict. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, very very tough cookies. You know what I mean? Tough guys, tough people. Because like I said back then, coming over here was a whole new experience for them. Just like, they didn't know any English. Slowly they learned this and that. It's remarkable.
Well, I think one of the stories that I remember being told was that Greek, the language is sort of what's spoken a lot in the Hamilton, is it not? Or?
Yeah, I mean, now it's kind of, you have our core of, like I said, you have our family that's there that helps out still, that still works. But then you have things are changing a little bit, and it's not like it used to be. Back in the day, it was everyone was Greek. They were coming over left and right. You get them, you come and help out. Do whatever you can for them, and then send them off in the right direction. But now, between all the families that were in there to now, what families are, these kids, families with their kids now. Kids don't want their kids to be exposed to that kind of atmosphere. Strict work, that kind of stuff. They want to have a little better, pathway. More opportunity out there for them. Instead of being stuck in the restaurant, so to speak.
Yeah. When did you notice this change start to occur? Or is it very gradual?
It's kind of gradual, yeah, because you're noticing that, like, with my cousins, both, all the two brothers, John and Nathan, that have boys. My other cousin that works in the kitchen with me. He has twins, a boy and a girl. They just graduated from, one graduated from Penn State, the other one graduated from Pitt. You can see when they were growing up, they're trying to, it's work ethic is one thing, but, a lot of their parents, I don't blame them. They don't want to go through the same stuff. They want to give their kids a better opportunity at, maybe find their own niche in life, it's tough, working in the restaurant business is not easy. It's not for the weak at heart. I tell you, you make a lot of sacrifice, especially with families,
Yeah.
Us growing up, like I said, I hardly ever seen my dad. I'd see my dad during a couple hours before he went to work, in the afternoon when I got off of school, just like my sister, or else, I'd hear him pulling up at night, around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same with Tommy. It was a non-stop schedule. It's in your blood. It's in your DNA. It's hard to get it out. That's in. You don't want your kids to be, around that kind of a. Nothing is wrong with it. Hard work. There's nothing wrong with it. But they want to give them a better opportunity. Maybe what they want to do. They can expand your horizons.
Well, I mean, So, what would you say your childhood was like then, in terms of?
You know what? It was. I started working when I was 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was, I worked there part time. Summertime I'd be there almost every day. I thought it was fun. When you're growing up, you're a kid. You're like, wow, back in the kitchen, you're helping out. You feel like you're actually contributing. Because you're, you try to tell these kids, like I tell my nieces and nephews a lot now, don't be in a hurry to grow up.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear that?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Because before you know it, boom. You're this age, you have responsibilities, you have bills, that kind of stuff. But back in the day, me growing up, I thought I wouldn't change for the world because it was fun. How do I say this? A lot of my friends growing up, like American, they never understood that. You have to, being exposed to one area of the restaurant business and the people you deal with on a daily basis, it's kind of, it's different. It's a lot different. A lot of my Greek friends their families have restaurants too, or have had restaurants. Same thing. I could, there was weekends I thought it'd be cool to hang out. I'd stay there till midnight, Fridays and Saturday nights, help them close, and it's all cool. I thought it was, it was neat, Yeah. I didn't have the normal childhood like everyone else, with going to football games on Friday nights. I never did anything like that. That kind of stuff. I was kind of, in a way I wish I would have, but you know what though? I also got, I got integrated a work ethic that, it's hard to kick out of me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
What about before you started working in the restaurant? Did you do anything
what
stands out, or?
Nothing. Like any kid that, grew up, you had your summertime, you had baseball or basketball. You couldn't get the basketball out of my hand. I'm just, things like that you run around the neighborhood, have friends and, this and that, and biking and skateboard, but as, nothing that stands out, let's say, I mean, we had summer times where we'd go to Greece almost. They'd send us kids over, like for like a month, because we'd stay with our grandparents or our relatives. We'd go to Greece almost every summer. So that was another thing. Like it was kind of weird, because you don't hear that often nowadays. People be like, "Oh my God, you send your kids over for like a month," but there up in where we were at, up in the village, there's no one gonna bother you up there. Grandparents, aunts, uncles. It's a great time. It was neat. That I wouldn't change for the world. You run around like a free spirit up in the mountains, or, in the villages there. It's so different. It's really cool. That's another side that I got exposed to. Like a lot of my other friends growing up, never really seen that, or I've never seen like the mountains or the villages, or even been to Europe. Like anywhere in Greece. Like anywhere in Europe, or especially Greece. You know what I mean? A lot of my American friends. They'd be like, "Wow, you're in Greece for like," they'd be like, "Are you serious?" Like, yeah, they know how to take it. You know what I mean? Because when you're young, you really, you weren't exposed. Especially a lot of kids around this area, unless you're somewhat privileged and your parents, travel, whatever. But not a lot of my friends ever did that. My Greek friends did, but not a lot of my American friends. They weren't ever really exposed to that kind of lifestyle. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of cool. But I do remember that during the summertime. Almost every summer we'd go.
So when you were in Greece, did you stay with your grandparents?
Grandparents, I had a lot of cousins there, my aunts and uncles, from both sides of the family, my mom and dad. You're talking about what, five siblings on each side of the family?
Yeah.
So tons of, cousins and, that you hung out with, that I ran around with, back in the day. It was pretty neat. I was kind of lucky.
When you were over there, did your cousins always ask you about what America was like? Or?
Oh my God, they were like, anytime it was funny because, you have different, like my cousins knew they knew what we were like. They had a little different perspective, like, because, they only see a couple, they think of America, they think of Levi's, Nike, all the big name, stuff that, and then they always ask for, like, can you bring me this, or can you get me that, we had a little easier, a little better. We had a lot better over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Over there, it's different. It still is different over there. You know what I mean? Unless you're an established family with money, you can do whatever you want. But a lot of people in Greece aren't like that. You know what I mean? They still struggle. But you get a mixed vibe sometimes. Now, growing up, they couldn't get enough of they're like, what's this like? What's that like? You know what I mean? And you tell them about like places like Hershey Park. You tell them about the cities. You tell them about like New York. You tell them about this or that. They just like their eyes would pop up. I remember a story. My sister. She got married back in 93, 94, the fall. No, 93, fall 93, and all my mom's side came over, and some of her sisters never stepped foot on a overseas before, to come over here ever. It was their first time over here. And we had to go pick them up at the JFK, up in New York. And once they got out of there and they seen the city from the distance and the Verrazano Bridge and all that kind of stuff and all the hustle, but they were just like, Athens is one thing, but it's a small blip compared to what you see the cities around here. You know what I mean? It was really mind blowing. It was really cool. Like I said, a lot of my cousins, they were always, that's the first thing they thought of. They were like the big names, like the labels, clothing, that kind of stuff, and what's it like? They hear of like Miami, they hear of Los Angeles, they hear of New York. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like I'm sure any kid that growing up, whatever, outside of our country, out of the U.S.
Now, was it the opposite for your grandparents? Were they more insular, or were you trying to learn from them, or were they also interested in the U.S.?
They were and they weren't. I mean, my grandmother was here one time visiting when I was still probably like a little 1, 2 years old at the time. I don't remember. She was here, and I'd hear stories. She visited for a little bit. But my grandfather, he had a stint or two here. He came in just to visit my mom and us kids. But they were very, they were like, they grew up. They're not. If they had to go to the main town somewhere, like I say, like a place like Carlisle, let's say, to get supplies, whatever, that's fine. They'd go by and do it. But they're very, somewhat secluded up in the village there. You know what I mean? That was their thing. That was their farm. They had goats. They had that was their thing. That's how they lived. My grandfather, I can remember this day. he lived to what, 90? You know, my grandmother was like 93. You know, with that mountain air, and like they say, they're not joking. You know, it's pure. You know, here it's different. You know, but there, you know, they wouldn't change it for the world. You know, nothing would bother them. No one would bother you up there. You know, it was a whole different. Like, you need a watch, you don't need a clock up there, or a watch, nothing. You know, it was really neat. It was different. It's hard to explain or see it until you're there. I mean, hard to understand until you're there to see it.
Yeah.
You know, but I grew up like that. Like I said, I'd go every summer just about when I was younger. And, you know, you kind of like neglect that. Now getting older, you're like, wow, you know, good times.
Well, you raised a point that I want to bring up later, just related to Carlisle and the boom in sort of truck traffic and you know, air quality and whatnot. But actually, I just want to transition a little bit back to what was school like? You know, elementary, middle, high school.
Honestly, it was kind of funny growing up because I remember. So I was the last year at Stevens School, which is now the community center now. Okay. And that was elementary school there / I think it was kindergarten through 5th grade, I think. And I was there for kindergarten. After that, they were closing the school down. I remember I had like my first year and in 1st grade, I was having trouble with my speaking, my language. I didn't know my alphabet, you know. Yeah. Because I was so integrated with Greek. You know, I was in Greece the summer before, and I remember it was embarrassing. I can still remember like my parents being called in because the counselor wanted to talk to them because they need to work on my vocabulary because I was so I didn't know my ABCs because I was so growing up at home it was all Greek. You know, you spoke the language, you wrote it, you know, this and that, and plus going to Greece and this and that, you're around it constantly. So my English was like, you know.
I imagine the ESL programs weren't quite as good back then.
No, not even one bit. I don't even know if they even exist back then. I don't know. I don't think so. You know, it was one of those things where it was really funny because you know I still won't forget that. It was kind of embarrassing. Now I sit back and I laugh about it, but back in the day you're just like, you know, like I don't know what to do. You know, my parents were like kind of embarrassed. You know, but you know it's when you're exposed to a multi, culture and you can speak another language, it's cool. But then again, back in the day I didn't realize that. You know, growing up, you know, you're just like, and then also like I used for all my formal papers, documents, whatever. Growing up, my full name is Athan Mazias. That's what it was, Mazias. And anytime, it was New Year, new class, whatever, and how you remember how sitting in grade school or whatever, like they're going through everyone's name, the teachers, and they'd say my name. Oh my God, it was like a horror story. It was nuts. You're just like, oh my God, don't say that. It was embarrassing. It was scary.
I had a friend who was Greek, and he went by Billy.
Okay.
I think his full name was like Vasilios.
Vasilios, yeah.
And but everyone, the teacher would always ask, do you have a preferred name? And he'd always raise his hand.
See, and I have a quick funny story. Like I was a freshman in high school here, yeah, and homeroom teacher. To this day, I'll never forget it. I kind of I was always a pretty mellow student. Never bothered him, I was very, very quiet. I never got in trouble. That's one thing I had is respect for the teachers. But I kind of was laughing during the start. My buddy was making a joke. He's sitting there in homeroom. My buddy writes something down, blah, blah, blah. I started laughing, it was really funny. And during the start, and our home teacher's like, he's like, Athan, I'm giving you one warning. And I'm like, that's Athan, And then finally he said it again, because I couldn't stop, And after about the second or third time he said my name, everybody's like, it's Athan. Because, all my friends I grew up with, they're like, what aren't you picking up here, man? It was like, so that's what I mean. It's just like it's the funny things like that I remember, even though it was like a horror story, even like, to this day it doesn't bother me, but back in the day when you're growing up, you're like, you're not as confident, you're still young, and you're afraid they're going to pick on you. You know what I mean? And every time they say that, I'm just like, oh man, jeez. But you know what? I won't change it for the world, though. I'll keep it that way.
All right. Is there anything else that stands out in terms of school or?
As growing up here?
Well, I'm just teachers or anything that were there any subjects or classes that you really enjoyed, or?
I was always one about the history. I always enjoyed history. You know, I don't mind. I was always very into that aspect. You know what I mean? I always, that's, you know, it's one thing to do science and all that kind of mumbo jumbo, but history was pretty cool because, you know, we do have it, and like you guys do here, you know, if you don't keep it, you don't want to lose it. You know, you don't forget your roots. You know, just like me growing up right now, I'm going to be going back to Greece here shortly, but end of June, going for a wedding. I'm a best man in the wedding, and I'm taking my girlfriend over, she's only been there maybe a few times ever, you know, but she wasn't exposed to it as like I was growing up back in the day. And you know, you teach her like, show her different places. You know, like I remember growing up like in the village and the town, you know, where we stay at, where we have our house at. You know, there's a lot of stuff there that, you know, different areas there, you know, that were pretty historic, you know, pretty neat, you know, because there was a lot of, as you know, just like here in the States, over there in, you know, in Greece especially, you know, there's a lot of course, there's a lot of, you know, foundations of civilization, but there's also a lot of history through like, you know, from like back to like World War I, World War II, you know what I mean? A lot of crazy stories out there. My aunts and uncles used to tell me, you know, what my grandparents went through growing up. You know, it's pretty neat in the area.
Bring a voice recorder.
Yeah,
Get some of these stories.
Well, I mean, it's pretty cool. You know, I asked my grandfather one time, you know, because he went through a lot because of growing up there. They had, like I said, they lived in the village. They had like a little, I want to say like you can call it like a bed and breakfast now, but they had a little eatery, little kitchen, little area you go in, coffee, something small to eat. They had overnight. They'd take them in like 3-4 rooms they had, and they put you up for the night, whatever. But back in the day when you had, like during the wars, like World War II, you had a lot of these I like to call them morons, who were loyal to like the Nazi party, whatever. Yeah. You know, you had rebels, and you had it was like a civil war amongst them too.
Yeah.
You know, different parties, different factions. It was crazy. I know a lot of blood was spilled there. And I always asked my grandfather to tell me some stories. He's like, man. He goes, if I told you a story, I go, why don't you tell me some stories about it? He goes, if I ever told you these stories, he goes, you wouldn't want to step foot up here again. You know, because there was a lot of, it was crazy times back then. Yeah. You know, I'll never forget that, you know. But there is a lot of history. That's why I like to learn about different stuff like that. It's pretty neat, you know.
Well, you know, in trying to preserve some of that, could you talk about the sort of the Greek community here in Carlisle a little bit, just growing up and?
Yeah, you know what? Growing up, you always had the Hamilton restaurant as one faction, or not faction, but one staple. You had the St. Charles, which is now Cafe Bruges. That was the Katsoumanis family. You had the Maziases and Charlie Colas, who owned the restaurant here, in the corner here back in the day. You had the Kostopoulos family, who had used to be the Lone Star, or Texas Lunch, whatever it was called, Lone Star. I get them confused. Then you had, on the outskirts, you had Sunnyside with Charlie Mazias, and you had the other Mazias family who had the Deer Lodge. So, you know, you had a lot of families that grew up around here, Greek. Next door to us, it used to be Blondies, was the Femme. I think it was Alexis was the family that had that place back in the day. You know, there were other restaurants here, I think, that I wasn't even familiar with, that I think my uncle told me about. I can't remember the names, but there were a few other, you know, there was a lot of Greeks here that were, you know, it was a big population here actually, back in the day. But like I said, times change. Families, like you went back to in the beginning of our taping here, like, you know, these families that were integrated, they came over from Greece, their kids get older, they get educated, they kind of filter away from like they don't want, you know, something more out of their life than their parents did when they were here. You know what I mean? Yep. You know what I'm saying? But you know, it were good times. They were different back in the day. You know, it was really cool. You know, we'd have like we'd all get together. There's a park. There used to be one in Mount Holly, and then our village bought. They had a small parcel of land out there. I forget. I was really young to remember it, but then they got money together. They bought another park here out towards Hanover, and being as a from the village that we grew up in, like my dad, Tommy, you know, a lot of the Greeks around here, they came over here from that village. They bought a park, which is still there today. You know, we have picnics. They do 2-3 times a year. We have a little chapel built up there. But it brings back their memories of growing up in the village, like they did. You know what I mean? You know, they don't want to lose that That's one thing I noticed about like my dad, my uncle, a lot of the Greeks around here, the older Greeks. They always tried to keep the families close as much as they could. You know, being around amongst more Greeks as well. You know, back growing up, it was all that's all you heard about. You know, like I remember like the holidays, it'd be jam packed at either my uncle's house or my dad's house, or like, you know, everyone from like, you know, everyone to like congregate together, or you know, during New Year's, you know, whatever. You know, it was different. You know, it was neat. You know, but then those days, sorry, not them, but those days are like, you try to keep everyone together. Like me and my friends that grew up in the area, as like they're my age, so we're like basically what, second generation, I guess. Is that right? I'm saying, yeah. I was born here. Yeah, we try to keep that same line going, but it's harder and harder. Back in the day, like you said here, like from the Costopolises to the Malliuses to, you know, us, Colas, Mazias, whatever, we tried to, you know, a lot of the old heads always had a good plan. They stuck together, you know, like, you know, from church to different activities, which is nice. I remember them things still, you know, growing up, especially during holidays. Be, you know, there's packed wall to wall, you know, from like any someone's house, you know, whether it's my uncle's, my dad's, or anyone, you know what I mean? They'd always have get-togethers and that kind of stuff. And it's, you know, but they also had that, they worked for that, to keep their families going, and they worked because that was their work ethic, you know, that was part of it. Not just the restaurant, but that was part of their life too. You know, they put everything together, you know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so I think you mentioned, so that Greek community still exists somewhat today, it's just not as...
It does. We still have, like I said, we have our village has a board. We have members that we still run activities up there at the church, up at the park there. We have a chapel. We try to have service every so often to celebrate like our village founding, that kind of stuff. We do like a picnic every year or twice a year, you know, just to try to get everyone back. It's getting harder and harder because I'm on the board. You know, and me as a younger generation, me now, you know, it's kind of funny, you know, like seeing a lot of these old heads, you know, so to speak, that are try to keep it. I respect that, but it's getting harder and harder to get everyone involved because, like I said, everyone's growing up. You know, you have a lot of my friends that are either Greek, or which are Greek, but are also like when they get, you know, a lot of them are married to, you know, they're not into the same culture, like Greek American, you know, like wives or whatever. It's hard to keep, to understand that, to keep the tradition going, you know. Somewhat, it's getting more complex, you know. You know, like 15, 20 years from now, I hope we can still do it. I hope I'm there. I mean, I'm hoping to be there, you know what I mean? But a lot of these old heads that try to keep the glue, they're the glue, you know, that understand it, that have been doing it for years. It's nice. You try to keep the tradition going. And we still do, but it's so hard to bring everyone together. Not like it was back in the day. You know, everyone's lives have changed so much with not generationally, with like, it's just so much more activity now. It's ridiculous. You know, you have a family of four now, hell, half of the, most families with their kids, they're always in activities.
Yeah.
You know, boom, 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 boom. They're always on the go. Summertime flies by like that. You know, it's hard to get everyone together to keep that. Back in the day, it wasn't like that. You know, we weren't exposed to that kind of, you know, activity. You know, they have, you know, I'll give you an example. Like, I know friends of mine, they have 2 boys, Greek now, and their kids are either in soccer, traveling soccer, basketball or baseball, whatever. But they're like, it's just things like that. It's hard to even get them together with, you know, only maybe during the holidays if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You know, it's just nuts. That's why back in the day was so much different, because they never did things like that. You know what I mean? They tried to keep the family close, knit together, try to keep everyone together as, you know, to keep everyone associated, you know, especially from the same village, because we had a lot of them that came over. You know, there's a lot of Greeks that reside over here from our village to this day, and they came over here. They're very successful, but that's kind of, I mean, those are the older Greeks that are like kind of dying off now, so you're losing that generation gap with the knowledge and like
that original connection.
Yeah, exactly. It's so hard to do that. You know, you can't understand until you go to the village to see what it was like. You know, because I try to go back as much as I can, and I tell friends of mine that are from their parents are from the same village as I am, you know, and they don't understand, because I stayed there. I'd grow up, you know, running around there during the summertime. They don't understand it, you know, because they were only exposed to it just a little bit more than, you know, a lot less than I was, you know.
Actually, I don't think I asked. What is the name of the village?
Neohori. So it's called like it's new. It's in English it'd be like a new area, Neohori, like a new village. You know, that's what they call it. You know, Neohori. That's what Neohori Napaktias, which is like a Napaktos is a town, like let's say Carlisle, and that's Neohori is a village on the outskirts, let's say, of Carlisle. Let's say, you know, it's like let's say towards Shermansdale out that way, like towards Carlisle Springs, let's say. But it's up in the mountains, though. You know what I mean? You know. So
that's in what part of Greece?
It's probably I'd say about for me when I go there, when I fly into Athens, it takes about at least 4 hours or so to get to 4.5 hours to get to the village. But I usually go. There's two ways you can go. I go. It's more like northwest.
Okay.
You know, up. Because if you look at the map, yeah, we're more like northwest. So you have to go a few over, like a bay bridge, whatever, you know, to get to Napaktos there. From Napaktos there, like, which is the size of Carlisle probably, it'll take you another like 2 hours to get to the village. You know what I mean? Not that I'm saying it's, not I'm saying 'cause it's far, which is not, but the roads there are just like, you know, it's like crazy. And back in the day, they weren't even paved. I remember growing up. Oh my God, you talk about getting car sick. Oh, it sucked. now the roads are paved. I remember when there were still dirt roads.
Wow.
You know, it was crazy. You know, that's the kind of culture that a lot of people weren't exposed. Like I was exposed to that growing up, and a lot of my American friends couldn't understand that. It was like they were like, really? I'm like, yeah, really. You know, there's just things like that were just that blow your mind away. You know, but yeah, that's our village. That's it's been there, and that's why we try to keep the tradition going over here. You know, because we have our branch over here, our board members, our group here that we have a chapter, let's say, and there's also Athenians, a lot of Athenians there that live in Athens, that also go back to the village or are from there, and we go back and forth. We talk this and that, you know, talk about stuff we can do at the village here or over there, see what they need help with once in a while to keep it, you know, in condition and that kind of stuff, and what they might need or whatever. You know, they always ask us for money. But you know, that's another chapter. That's another story.
All right. Well, I'm just wondering, could you talk a little bit about the Hamilton and just, I mean, it's had a big impression on both you and Carlisle and a number of people.
Carlisle, like I said, the Hamilton is one of those places where, it's a dying. How do I say this? I want to be polite. It's like a dying institution. It's hard, you know, like I said, I grew up in it since I was a little kid. Regardless if I was working there or not, running around, you know, as part of our family. You know, hell, I don't even know why, you know, this day I'm sitting with myself, I'm like, why do I even have a home right now? Like, I have a house. I'm like, I'm never there. I'm never home. I go home to sleep, maybe, that's it. You know, but it's one of those things where, just like my uncle who owns the place, you know, Tommy, it's part of his life. You know, it's you don't want to lose that. You know, because you lose a part of, but I know times change, you know, you move on, you grow. I mean, things do change, unfortunately, you know, but that is such a hard, because it's a tough business. You know, restaurant business is already hard enough to begin with.
Yep.
But that's such an institution there. There's many families that have gone through there, you know, but we're still, like, our family is still there, we're still solid. But, you know, times change. I wouldn't want to change it for the world. You know what I mean? Because there's some things you're like, they ask you to do some, they'll ask you to do like, why don't you guys do this with the restaurant? Why don't you guys, I'm like, nope. You know, there's some things that are, when you come to the Hamilton, you know what I mean? Some people don't like it. That's tough. That's the way it is. You know, there's a lot of places out there you can go to. But, you know, the way we work, you know, some things are a little unorthodox, but some people can't get over that. You know, they love it. You know, you come in on Friday night, you're yelling at orders. Not many places do, or, you know, when it's really jam-packed busy. Yeah. Or whatever, even during the day, even like on the week, you know, you don't find that kind of atmosphere anymore. And almost everything is very corporate now, the way they want to run a business, you know, which is fine. But, you know, I grew up there, and it's like part of your roots. You know, I learned a lot there. I learned a lot of life lessons there. You know, I tell people, I'm like, you need to go to understand people, to deal with people. You don't need to go to college. You don't need to get a sociology degree or a psychology degree. It's like on the job training. You learn every day. It's amazing what you have to encounter. And you know what though? Some days you have their ups and downs, but that's any part of life, any job you've ever had or you're gonna have, whatever. You're always gonna have this. It's like give or take. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who you are. You know, there's no happy. I mean, you can be content. You can be happy. Some people are. That's fine. But you're gonna have days where you're gonna be like, you know, ups and downs.
Yep.
That's life. But you know, the one thing I do take from the restaurant that, you know, work ethic, how to work, the values. You know, you don't want to disrespect anyone. You know, you learn. And a lot of people that have been coming for years are like our family.
Yeah.
You know, on a daily basis. You know, I remember years ago we had a wedding to go to. It was probably about like 8 years ago, and we closed down the restaurant just for like 8 days. Okay, and I kid you not, that I had people calling my phone, leaving voicemail, like voice recordings at my house, wondering what happened. Like they were like, "Are you guys okay?" Blah blah blah. You know, it was only for like we had some construction going on too. We did some new flooring, that kind of stuff. So it gave us a little break, you know. But just the things like that, because some people are, believe it or not, we have our base core of customers that have been coming for years. They're like family to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're there religiously. You know, sometimes I wonder why they're there so much, but they enjoy the atmosphere. You know, you grew up with Latin. I've seen a lot of customers that I grew up with
Mm-hmm.
when I was little come and go. That passed on. You know, I could sit there and, you know, me and my cousins, we can sit there and talk about person after person after person. You know what they ate, what they get every day, or what they used to get, or you know, you remember this guy. You know, like, you know, we had a lot of shift workers that were from Lear or Maslin, whatever you call it out here off of Spring Road. That's not there anymore. And you also had a lot of tire and wheel people. What do you call it? The rubber plant back in the day. And we had tons of those, you know, loyal people, like workers that come in, families, you know, for years and years and years. And, you know, some would always stand out more than others, and we'd always have, like, you know.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but is there any particular person who comes to mind that really, really stands out, or?
There was a guy back in the day. He lived probably like a block over from me, from our house, from our family. And I remember this day. I think he worked at Tire and Wheel. Yeah, did he work at Tire and Wheel? Yeah, he worked at Tire and Wheel. And he always wore like a blue jumper suit.
Mm-hmm.
And they would call him Ruppy. That was his thing. That was his nickname. Every time he'd come in, it was like clockwork. You know, he'd come in. I forget what time of day he'd be in there, because like I said, I was young. But when I worked there part time, you know, he had certain shifts that he'd come in. He'd get a bowl of soup, vegetable, whatever it was. That was his thing. He didn't bother no one. You know, he had his little thing, coffee, whatever. He was like clockwork. You know, sat up front of the counter there.
Yep.
You know, a couple stools up, whatever. But everyone knew him. They didn't bother no one. You know, guy passed on now. It's a shame. You know.
Yeah.
You know, but there was a lot of different guys like that. There was another guy named Mo. He'd come in at least 2-3 times a week, and when he'd come in, I don't know if he worked at Tire and Wheel or not for a while there, and he worked at Grand Buick back in the day. Guy would come in all the time, very mild, never bothered a soul, never said a word. But, you know, you might mess up an order here and there, you know,
Yep.
wouldn't complain. You know, it's such a nice guy.
Ideal customer.
What's that? Oh my God, yeah. There's tons of customers that like. I always tell people, I go, look, you always have a customer or two that might drive you
Yep.
off the wall, but that's very minute compared to how many customers that we have that are amazing. You know, there's tons of people that used to come in here all the time like that. You know what I mean? There was one guy named Randy, little man. I think he worked at Lear, or he worked over here at the, what do you call it, Frog and Switch? I can't remember. I was little. I was nervous. You know, I was growing up, you know, when I had to actually work, you know, like start working with customers. I was always nervous because I couldn't understand what he would say. Little old man, you know what I mean? He's sitting there coming off a shift, and always, because he wouldn't spend a lot of money because he didn't, not that he made a lot, but he didn't want, you know, he'd get a bowl of like vegetables sometimes, or he'd get like a soup here and there, or coffee, whatever. You know, he was very, but I couldn't understand what he'd say to me, you know, when I asked him an order. You know, I was always scared of the guy. You know, you know what I mean. Well, you know, growing up, you see something, you're like petrified. You're like, oh my God, what did he say? But there was a lot of people like that grew up in our town here that, used to come in, and I'm sure friends of mine that have other businesses, you know,
Yeah.
in the area will tell you the same thing. But the Hamilton always had, especially when Lear closed and like Maslin and, Tire and Wheel, it was kind of like a culture shock. Well, not culture shock, but it was sad, you know, because we had tons of people that would come in. Those guys would come in like on a daily basis, you know what I mean? They're off of a shift or whatever, and they'd order takeout or they bring in food to the, you know, for the guys or whatever they're working, you know. You know, but yeah, there was a lot of history there, you know. Tons of places around here were the same way like we were, but you know, you always had those customers that always stood out to you, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
and some of them, hell, you didn't even know their names really. You only knew them by like a nickname, you know. And to this day, I probably do the same thing, you know. I know. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I know the majority of our customers that come in well, but then there's a few that you're like, what's his name again? I can't remember it because we have like, you know, some people have nicknames for him, whatever, you know. But that's just funny. I mean, it's like I said, unless you're in it to see it on a daily basis, you know, you understand. Not everyone was. Like I said, there were some people that were very nice, and there were some that were like a little grumpy. But you know, what are you gonna do? That's just the way. Can't please everyone, you know.
Well, before I get too far, what is your role, or what are the various roles that you've had at the Hamilton over the years, leading up to your current role?
Oh my God, let's see, dishwasher. Back in the when I was little, I'd help prep once in a while when I was little back there. Bust tables when I was younger.
Now, was this when your uncle owned it, or
this is when Tommy still has it, but that's when I was little and Tommy was there. And
but so you never worked for Charlie Colas?
No. I never worked for. And see, I was young I was very young. I was probably like a toddler when he passed away.
All right.
You know, I never had the chance to see what he was like. I heard he was he was a good man, very stern.
Yeah.
But and a lot of those guys were. One thing I noticed about like my uncle, you might have heard about Charlie Colas back in the day. A lot of those older Greeks, something that you don't see nowadays. It was like you give someone their word with a handshake.
Yep.
That goes no further. I mean, that's how it was. Yeah. That's how you worked. That's how you operated. You know, a man's word was.
Yep.
Now, good luck. You need writing. You need paper. You know, you put in writing. It's ridiculous. It's like. It's nuts, you know.
We have some paperwork for you after this.
Yes, but the thing about it was that's how it was back in the day, and that's how I learned. That's what I learned from my uncle growing up. He was very, you learn a lot from him how he worked. That's how it was instilled in me. You start you're gonna do the dishes. You're gonna bust tables. You're gonna do all the little stuff that you have to. You know me, growing now. I have no problem. I can do anything you want there. Just about. Yeah, pretty much. Now, you want a waiter? I'll waiter. You want me to cook? I'll cook. You want me to prep? I'll prep. You know, that's how you learn back in the day. That's how you were, and that's how you build that work ethic in your body. That's how they did it back in the day. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's one thing my uncle always says. He goes, you want to work in this business? Because you got to be able to do everything. It's that bottom line. You know, first and foremost. You know, now they're. And they go on my uncle, like right now, last month or so, he's been in Greece. Place runs in cruise control right now. Because we're there. You know, we watch shop, we watch what's going on, this and that. And, but it's like a routine you develop. You know, you can't help it. You know.
So what's your current role?
You can say manager, let's say.
All right.
You know.
I have here that you're known as the Hotchee dog man.
Yeah, I'm the Hachi guy. Yeah, I'm the frontline guy. I'm the front of the house, like they say.
So you manage and you do the grill as well.
Yeah, I do everything. You know, like this past weekend we were short. Like I said, a cousin of mine, his son just graduated from Pitt, so he went out to Pittsburgh for Saturday. So I was stuck in the back all day. I was in the grill. I have no problem. I'm very diverse. You stick me anywhere you want.
Can you just tell me a little bit about the Hotchee dog?
See, I hear different stories. I know my Aunt Helen asked her, Colas that helps out here. I asked her because I wanted to get T-shirts developed back years ago, and I told them, I asked her, I go, we want to get a little slogan and the dog and the name, and you good? And she wanted to. I asked her, I'm like, well, I wanted to put the date since whatever. She's and I couldn't remember when they started. when they started making them. And she told me her dad started making them back in the late 30s. Was it like 37? 1937. And the name Hachi dog, actually, like the nickname, it's just a nickname. I get people that ask me, they're like, is that a Greek word? I'm like, no, it's not a Greek word. It's just hot chili cheese dog, which is a slang nickname that townies and locals and like Dickinson kids back in the day, back in like the 70s and late 60s, that it was like it just caught on, and ever since then it's been that's all you hear about, especially with a lot of the alum that come back from Dickinson College.
Yep.
Those guys are diehards. I love it. They'll be back here. I don't know if it's first weekend or second weekend of June. These guys are phenomenal. They're amazing. These guys love they love the Hachi. You know what I mean? They love their Hachi dogs. It's just funny because that name. It's funny. It's a funny nickname, but they're like, what's a hot? People. It's nothing spectacular like meaning wise. It's just a simple, catchy little nickname that's caught on ever since.
It's not even on the menu, so.
Exactly. So when you come in, I have to get customers that come in that hear about our place. They're like, why isn't the hot dog on the menu or the hot dog? I'm like, it's like one of those. What's that show called? Dives, whatever. It's on like A&E, whatever. Like they go to those like little guy goes to those little mom and pop places all over the country. There are things that you go to like when you come to Hamilton. There's certain things like any kind of old school place like we are, that are on the menu. And that's the dogs, the Hotchee dogs. They're just a known thing.
Is there anything else that people should know about that? Or is everything else on the menu?
Everything else, look, being like my uncle, who is like our niche there has been the Hachi dog, the chili dogs for years.
Yep.
But he'll have customers that come in there that ask about the dogs that are new to the area, this and that. He goes, hey, you might want to try those, but he goes, we have other stuff better. Get a Greek chicken breast salad or whatever. You know what I mean? He tells them, he tries to get them away from there. And they want to try the Hachi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really funny. And him as an owner, who's been there for years, it's one of those things that it's a known name for how many years. It's that you don't have to push it.
Yep.
It's just there. Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of other good things on the menu, but it's kind of funny you said that. Like I said, even my uncle, who, like I said, he doesn't even push like new customers that come in here to get the Hachi dog. He'll tell them to get something else. He's nuts. It's great, but it's one of those things. Like it's just a common household. It's a common thing when you go in there. That's people know about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. I just moved to Carlisle, or I started working in Carlisle in July. It was actually one of the first things I heard about was the Hachi dog.
Yeah. See. Yeah. Exactly. It's like it's like iconic. Like it's like one of those things. It's like it's a culture here. Like if you haven't had one, just like that, or maybe a George's Sub or whatever. There's like Massey's. Same thing with their ice cream. Because that place has been there for years. I don't know if it's been as long as us or not. I can't remember, to tell you the truth. Because I do remember the original family that owned it. I can't remember when they were, but it's one of those things that's been there. Yep. Massey's has been a household, Carlisle ice cream place for years. It's been there. It hasn't changed, except it changed hands. But the concept,
Well, so we've been talking a little bit about the Hamilton, and you mentioned earlier about some of the patrons and the people that came in. Are there any humorous or significant incidences that you remember at the Hamilton, or?
I want to say humorous. There's been always some crazy moments, where you've had, emergencies. But you've always had some good times. I remember, the good times was back. I say funny or humorous, not humorous, but like. Generationally speaking, I remember when I was little, I was still in middle school probably at the time. I remember back when Carlisle won 4 state championships in a row, basketball, and that place there, I was there Saturday night and I was little, and I was stuck in the kitchen. They were so busy, after they won the state title. But, people would be so packed in there. People would be sitting on the floors, they'd be it was insane. It was insane. It was crazy. They were open later. It was more, there's a lot of, I don't know if there were funny stories. It's hard to explain, because I gotta think about that. You know what I mean? But a lot of good times there, many great times there.
Yeah.
A few scary times there. A few emergencies where you might have to call, the powers that be, like the police or medical, people. But
Yeah.
I mean, but overall, it's like I said, it's one of those things where you learn. How do I say it? It's life lessons you learn in there.
Yeah.
You see everything, all walks of life. But there's always been good times in there. Good times like we've had, like I said, state championship teams back in the day. Just like even our local customers that come in that hang out with us. Late night, whatever. We might have a basketball game on or a baseball game on or whatever. World Series or NBA champ.
Yep.
I'm just saying, like, there's always been stuff like that. We've had like a few instances for like customers for their birthdays. We might have surprised them. A few of our customers, with a cake or something like that, or talk with their families and do something for. There's always good stuff. There's always a good vibe there. Anytime you come in, we have a guy that comes in there. He's divorced, whatever. Comes in, but he has. This is like I say, we have for our regulars. That's his. He comes in. He loves talking to everyone. He has no. He has. If he doesn't get out and say something, he works all day, poor guy. But we're like his other family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He'll come in and talk to us in the kitchen, the girls, whatever. You know what I mean? He needs to. But there's always been good. There's always been good times there. It's one of those things where it's hard to explain sometimes. It's not like any individual, anything that sticks out. It's hard to pick out. You know what I'm saying?
You reminded me when Helen was in here earlier. She mentioned her mother used to bake all the time, bake all these cakes. I was wondering, is any of that sort of baking or cooking tradition passed down? Did you learn from Tommy? Or?
You know what? Those things, like the food part of it,
Yep.
with like your meatloafs and your different stuff like that, old school cooking. You know what I mean? Yeah, we still have that concept. We pretty much anything my uncle gets or he buys product wise, he tries to buy quality, not not the, because you can sit there. I don't care who you are, you might think it's good. I mean, I know friends of mine that try to cut corners.
Yep.
Business people, just to save a buck or two. My uncle doesn't do that. He always wants to make sure he has quality. As for, and like I said, we do make a lot of stuff from scratch to this day still. You know what I mean? Literally. I always like to make the vegetable soup.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a pain. Let me tell you. Or the chili sauce. It's a big misconception. People think that we actually. I've had people ask me, where do you guys buy your sauce from? I'm like, no, we make it at the restaurant. We make it every week.
I'm assuming it's a secret too, so you can't tell us.
No, I can't say nothing.
All right.
But that's one thing I missed, and I was having this conversation the other day with my mother, or my dad. I can't remember who. We were talking about working at the restaurant, and how Aunt Helen, her mom back in the day, Mrs. Colas, people would be like they'd go nonstop, like nuts for like her baking, like her pies.
Mm-hmm.
I heard they were just off the hook. They were just incredible. I mean, I never had a chance to understand that or to see it or to actually take it, but I've heard countless of stories myself from other customers about it. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah. A lot of old timers that come in there, they remember those days. They'd come up just for like her pie, just to back in the home stretch. But like I said, a lot of it, and it is harder to, like the baked goods like that, but the pies and that kind of stuff, or the desserts, it's kind of hard to, not like it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But the cooking aspect of it though, like a lot of stuff we still make homemade from scratch, we still do. All that stuff. Like the meatloaf, or even the way we do our beef or our turkey off the bone. I mean, like we roast our turkey.
Yep.
Literally, we from hand. We pick it apart. The ham off the bone still. We bake them. We carve them. Everything. Just there's stuff that old school tactics that we've done for years. That's why we don't want to. My uncle wouldn't want to change for the world. Little things like that. You can buy a ham ready to go and you can slice it just like a deli ham.
Yep.
But we don't want to do that. We'd rather. That's the way my uncle's been on for years. Just something. I'll give you that simple concept. You boil them, bake them in the oven, carve them, slice them down off the bone. That's how he likes to do, just like it was back in the day.
Well, I know you don't serve Greek food at the restaurant.
No, we do not. Yeah,
but did you learn how to make that growing up, or?
It's funny. I don't think I ever learned how to do that until now. Growing up, I didn't pay attention to that kind of stuff. I was little, kind of spoiled like that because it's amazing what stuff like my mom would make or my aunts would make.
Mm-hmm.
You're kind of spoiled with it. You don't realize you take it for granted. Now growing up, like now the last how many years now, you learn how to do things like that. Like we do our festival here in Camp Hill at our Greek church there. It's coming up middle of May here. So we're doing a lot of prepping right now. And over the years, the handful of years or so since I've started contributing a lot more and helping out there with our church, you learn how to do a lot of that stuff. But my mom, she'll tell me she wants to help me learn how to do it, but then she'll laugh about it. She's like, "You're not gonna be able to do it." But there's stuff that you learn now that I've learned that you learn over the years because back to what we said earlier, you don't want to lose that generation gap. You don't want like if you have kids or whatever, you want them to get that feel for the Greek food and all that kind of stuff. How we did it back, or how my mom or my aunts and uncles, how they did it back in the day. But you do learn. I am learning though. It's kind of funny you said that. You gotta keep the recipes, man. You gotta put them in up here, or else forget about it. Yeah, they'll be gone forever.
Well, so just getting at the end of the interview here, I was just wondering, going back to a little bit what you said earlier about the mountain air, and sort of how that doesn't exist here in Carlisle. Just how has Carlisle changed since you've been here your entire life? And
so many more. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, all these trucking terminals and 81 and all these warehouses. It's just the quality. I mean, we've talked about this before. I've heard on the news too. I think like the quality of air around here is just really bad. It's horrible. You go somewhere like we're at up in the village, you're just like take it all in. That's why you smell like the trees and the pine trees and all that. What it's really like there. Here, you have so much more traffic. It's just ridiculous. Like if you would have told me back in the day that we'd have like all these warehouses out here now that bring in how many trucking, how many trucks. It's sad because we are like a, I guess, strategic point on like a traveling, on like a business, like, if you have a business, you're trucking, you're running goods, whatever, from supplier to supplier. We are an intricate, apparently, part on 81 there where we're like a focal point, you know what I mean? Like, that's the spot, and that's why there's so many trucking terminals here and warehouses that they're building here, like out, by the masses. It's ridiculous. It's sad. And that pollution does, the trucks that go through here on a weekly basis or a daily basis is nuts. It's not like it used to be. It's kind of sad.
I'm just wondering, it occurred to me, with the sort of demise of manufacturing in Carlisle and sort of the build-up of the warehouses, have a lot of those warehouse workers, have they migrated to the Hamilton too? Or
you've gotten a few, it's hard to base a percentage, or like to even give you like a percentage to say, but the younger ones that were there that were working at, let's say, Tire and Wheel over here, that weren't as into it as long as a lot of these older, middle, old timers or whatever, kind of had to move over to like that, warehousing type of job now. And they also pass what they know where to go eat down to others that come in, you know what I mean? And we do get them in, we'll get takeouts, call-in orders, whatever, from, different, like Giant, I think Giant has a big distribution center out here off of the Rittner. We'll get I know a lot of guys that come in there that work there for years now, that work consistently, come in all the time. A few of the other ones out there, very, very seldom you hear, you get a lot, but that's one group we get a lot from, because a lot of them used to work over here at Tire and Wheel that have kind of like moved over now since it's not, that institution's gone, that factory's gone. So, but they try to spread, it's funny you said that about when you came over here. I'll give you an example. You came into Carlisle, and you said that's one of the first things you heard about, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's it's one of those things where I like to call free advertisement because we have so many loyal customers. Just I hate to say customers, but even like they're like that I grew up with are like family members to us practically.
Yeah.
That anywhere we go, anywhere they any new people that come into the area, whatever, that's the first thing they talk about, where to go eat. And that's that's one of our things. I had a girl. It's funny, real quick, that I don't know who it was to this day. I don't know if she still works there. She used to work at the Hampton Hotel over here off the Turnpike. And there's so many customers that she send our way from like the car shows or whatever. And they're like, yeah, a young lady told us at the desk where to go eat,
Yeah.
I'm like, really? I'm like, I don't know who this person, I had no idea who it was. But this, like that, like you said, like a lot of these guys that went from, let's say, Tire and Wheel or Lear, they ended up working at these warehouses. It's like word of mouth. You get them, they'll tell their friends that they don't know they're out of the area, where to go or where to come, they'll get food, they'll get takeout, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not like it used to be, though. Back in the day, it was just something about that. You had, everyone's going on shift, you know what I mean? They're coming in to eat early in the morning when we open up, or they come in later after their shifts. So, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, if you have to take a step back and understand how important that was. Like we kind of, I didn't realize it, kind of neglect it, because it was always in your, every day routine. Now you see that's gone, you're like, wow, kind of this stinks,
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit, but I'm sure there's stuff that I forgot to ask you. So is there anything else you want to talk about or mention?
Not in particular. I mean, I thought we covered a lot.
Okay.
I tried to cram in, not cram, but I'm trying to hit everything for you.
No, I appreciate it.